Do black coops get hotter in the sunshine? We've been asked that question quite a lot, and today we're going to test it scientifically and find out. Hello, welcome to English Country Life. Welcome to the chicken enclosure. My name's Hugh, and together with my gorgeous wife Fiona, I run a small holding here in rural Lincolnshire, and together we breed rare breed chickens. Now, for a long time we've been working with the Nestera Coop company and we love their stuff, but a question we get asked a lot is, these coops, they're black plastic, do they get very hot in the summer? Now, I've got an opinion on that. Other people will have an opinion on that. I'm sure you've got an opinion on that. But something I've learned over the years is pitting my opinion against your opinion gets us nowhere. I was brought up in a scientific household. My dad was a PhD, a doctorate in science, and my brother and I were raised to kind of think critically and to measure things and to work them out factually. And what I decided would be great fun is to actually scientifically measure the different factors that can affect whether a coop gets hot or cold in the summer, and what we can do to affect that, whether the choice of coop, the choice of location, and all sorts of other factors is actually going to affect whether that coop gets hot or cold. So what I'm going to do is describe to you the thought process I've had, the mechanisms and methods I'm going to use to measure those temperatures, and then we can review the results together. If you're not interested in the method, feel free to skip ahead. There'll be chapters in the video, but it's actually, I think, worthwhile understanding that what I'm trying to do here is set aside all personal prejudice and just objectively and scientifically measure this to work out how we can keep our poultry cool in the summer. Let me explain then very briefly to you the scientific method that I'm trying to use. What I'm trying to do is measure the temperature in multiple coops at the same time, and really what I want is to minimise the factors that could affect discrepancies in those readings, other than the things that we actually want to compare. So to start with, when I thought of doing this, I got some glass thermometers that we use to measure the greenhouse temperatures, and I put them in different coops and I would sort of scuttle round them frequently trying to measure the readings between them. But A, they're not that accurate, and B, you know, the act of me opening the coops up to take readings, etc., honestly made it was just too rough to be sensible. I even tried with one of those thermometer gun things, and you know what, again, same problem. I couldn't be in lots of places at once. So I've made an investment, or we've actually bought stuff, which is unusual for us on the small holding. And what I've got here is a Wi-Fi enabled temperature sensor, and I've bought 4 of them because I really want to do this properly. And what that means is I can put one of these in each of 4 coops. Now, first things first, are they accurate? Well, I checked them. When I bought them, I put all 4 in one place. Now, I got all the literature out on them, and they're supposed to be accurate to plus or minus half a degree centigrade. I thought, well, let's check. So I fired them all up, put them all in the same place and checked. And actually the 4 I've got are accurate to plus or minus 0.2 of a degree centigrade. They all read the same within 0.2 degrees centigrade. Now, honestly, if across 4 coops, the only difference we get is 0.2 degrees centigrade, we're going to say it doesn't matter what kind of coop you got, where you put it, they all end up as roughly the same temperature. So that, fine. Next thing is which coops to select. Well, these 2 are 2 of the coops I'm going to use, and let me tell you why I'm going to use them. They are broadly equivalent in size. They're both low coops, they're a similar shape. This one is wood, that one is a black and green plastic Nestera. They're in the same part of the orchard, which means they're both exposed to full sun. They both have nest boxes on the southern side. And I'm going to put the temperature sensors in the south facing nest box to keep everything as I can as consistent, other than the fact that this one's wood and that one's plastic. The other 2 coops are down the other end of the orchard and they're in under the shade of cherry trees, and that's a comparison I want to make. It's like, I want to know, do shady coops again make a difference? Now, if it's all down to air temperature, whether it's in full sun or in shade will not affect it one bit, but I want to know if that is having an effect. And the joy is, down there we've got a plastic and a wooden, up here we've got a plastic and a wooden, so we can compare plastic with plastic in sun and shade, wood with wood in sun and shade. And we can see all the differences between the two different types of coop and which ones are going to keep coolest in the summer. Welcome to the shady part of the orchard. There's a sweet chestnut tree, and a cherry tree, and a pear tree giving me shade. I've also got a wooden coop and a Nestera wagon so close that I can touch them both at the same time, both with temperature sensors in. So that gives us the ability to measure all the shady areas and the differences between them. Now, we've left those sensors running for a number of days, and we can look at a lot of data and work out what it is that's changing the internal temperature of that coop. Let's take a look at that data together and work out what we can find out. Let's take a look then at these temperature results that we've got, and what we're going to see are some graphs. And this is a typical example graph that my temperature sensors are putting out. So that's a full day's worth of data, and we can see that we can measure the peak temperature that was achieved in that coop on that day. But we can also look at things like the temperature gradients that happen to see, does one coop heat up more than another, and similar matters like that. And I think that's a very useful comparison to be able to draw. I'm going to use the 28th of July as our test day. It was a nice day, it was warm, there was plenty of sun, but there was some breeze, there were some cloudy periods, and I think having some mixed weather really gives us something to get our teeth into. I'm going to look at the sunny coops first. By sunny coops, I mean coops that were placed in a position where they don't benefit from any significant shade from trees, buildings, etc. And the coop at the top right is a Nestera large ground coop. It's made of recycled black plastic with a green recycled plastic roof. The coop at the bottom left is broadly similar in size. It's made of tongue and groove wood with a plywood roof covered in black painted roofing felt. So they're equivalent sizes, they're in the same position, they benefit from the same environmental conditions. Let's start then with the Nestera ground coop. On the 28th of July, it peaked at 27.8 degrees centigrade internal temperature. That's the temperature in the south-facing nest box. And that temperature peaked about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's look at the wooden equivalent. Well, that one peaked at 27.7 degrees centigrade, and also the temperature peaked at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the graphs are of a broadly similar shape, showing broadly similar peaks and a broadly similar cooling period. I think we can see there's a slightly different input curve, which if anything shows that the Nestera heated up slightly more slowly, but I wouldn't read too much into that at the moment. Let's see how that compares then with the two coops that we had in the shady area. And these are our test subjects. On the left, we have a Nestera wagon. Recycled black plastic body with a recycled green plastic roof. And on the right, we have a tongue and groove wooden coop that I made in a hurry one year when we needed an extra coop. It's good thick wooden construction. I think it's 1.2 centimetre tongue and groove wood. And again, it has a plywood roof covered in black roofing felt. So the wagon, well, this one peaked at a maximum temperature of 22.7 degrees centigrade. And that temperature peaked at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that's 2 hours later. I think we can put that down to a couple of things potentially. I mean, one of them is it's in a different part of the garden, and obviously the sun moves round during the day. So the sun actually hits various parts of the garden, obviously, as it moves around in the sky. But of course, also, this coop is in the shade, so it's heating up more slowly. This is the key point, probably, of everything. The temperature is 5 degrees centigrade lower at its highest point than an equivalent coop in full sun. What about the shady wooden coop? Well, that reached a maximum temperature of 21.3 degrees centigrade. It also peaked at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So both coops peaked 2 hours later than their sunny equivalents, but at the same time as one another when they're in the shade. And the maximum coop difference on the wooden one was 6.4 degrees centigrade lower than its sunny equivalent. Comparing the two coops that were in shade, The wooden one is 1.4 degrees centigrade cooler than the wagon, but I do struggle with that, to be honest. It's the facts, and I'm going to show you the unvarnished facts. The why troubles me, because it can't be that the sun is heating up the wagon more than it was when the equivalent coupe was in full sun. This wagon is in shade, and we're not seeing a massive difference between wood and black plastic when the coupes are in full sun. So there is some difference between these coupes that are in shade, and I think it actually may be one of two things. One is the wagon is a considerably larger coupe than the wooden coupe, and maybe that's having an effect. The other is, and I'll blame myself for this, I didn't open the door on the wood coupe in the shade. I did have the doors open on the wagon and full ventilation. Is that making a difference? I'm going to test it again, trying to make that sort of level of ventilation more equivalent and see if that's the factor. Not sure what it is, but I don't think it's the sun. So let's look at some conclusions that we can draw, and perhaps some things that need further testing. Now, it's important to state that these results apply to the UK in mixed summer weather conditions. I'm quite sure that if I were to repeat this test in a Alaskan winter or a sunny Californian summer or a South African rainstorm, we'd see different things. But I think perhaps the trends and the effect of conditions would be similar, but obviously the highs and lows and so forth would be very different. I am going to conclude that where coupes are placed in the full sun, whether they're wood or whether they're black plastic, doesn't seem to make a significant difference. The differences were there, but so tiny they were within the margin of error on the sensors. So what's happening there is the coupes are heating up whatever they're made of. In all honesty, the wooden coupe was slightly cooler on a number of days than the Nestera black plastic coupe, but always by less than 1 degree, and usually within the margin of error on the sensors. Coupes of either material placed in dapple shade were definitely cooler than any kind of coupe placed in full sun, by 5 degrees centigrade or more on the test day, and by a significant amount on every day that I checked the results. It's also fair to say the wooden coupe placed in the shade was measurably cooler than the plastic coupe, not by a massive amount, but by a measurable amount, and I'm not sure why, and I need to do further testing on that. And actually on that factor, I think it'll be interesting to do some further testing all around. For example, these coupes are in dappled shade. What would the effect be of putting the coupe in full shade, so almost behind a wall, so it was on the north side of a wall? I could do that. We could also test identical coupes where one was fully ventilated and one was not. See if that made a difference. We could explore this a great deal further. But for now, I'm certainly concluding that putting coupes in full sun means that they're going to get considerably hotter. Doesn't matter what they're made of. Putting them in shade is going to make a massive difference. I couldn't leave it there. I couldn't. I'm sorry. I had to know what was going on with those Shady coupes. So on the 31st of July, I opened up the Shady wood coupe. And we took a day's set of readings. It was a cooler, shady, overcast day, but I just wanted to see if we still got the same differences. Well, what we saw was that the Shady wagon on that day peaked out at 19 degrees centigrade. What about the wooden coupe? Well, that peaked out at 20.3 centigrade with the door open. Now, in the interest of honesty again, the chickens were in and out of both coupes that day, and the sensors got knocked over in both coupes because of the chicken activity. That does happen sometimes. So I'm not sitting there and saying the wagon was definitely cooler when the conditions were the same. I'm not saying that the wooden coupe is definitely cooler when the conditions are the same. Actually, I think what we demonstrated fairly well is any differences that we're getting, which are a degree or a degree and a half difference between the coupes, are probably due to other factors than their constructions. And I would very much like, if people are interested in the future, to look into other factors such as ventilation, such as degrees of shade, that can affect how hot or cool your coupe becomes. I hope that was interesting for you. It was certainly interesting for me, and I've actually quite enjoyed the process of working this out. Now, I think there might be a lot more to learn here. We could use a similar method to think about how do we keep coops warm in the winter. What effects does ventilation have on coop temperature? We could do a lot of this kind of stuff. And if that interests you, let me know, and we'll do some more scientific measurements around chicken management to see what we can find out. If you've enjoyed today's video, can you spare us 5 seconds? Give us a thumbs up down below. Let us know in the comments about what your experiences are. Clearly, what I've tried to show here is typical UK temperatures. But obviously, other parts of the world have very, very different weather, very, very different climate, and are likely to have other experiences. And if you want to replicate this experiment in your area, I would love you to tell me about it and tag me in on that video. But leave comments down below to tell me what more you want to know. And we'll try and make future follow-up videos to cover off those points. If you want to see those videos and everything else we produce on self-sufficient living, just tap on subscribe down there if you haven't subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell next to it. You'll hear as a free service every time we upload a new video. But for today, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Come back and see us soon. Take care.